Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. The federal courthouse in Manhattan had witnessed many emotional testimonies during the Sean Diddy Combs trial, but when Robert Rymeek Williams, known professionally as Meek Mill, entered the courtroom on Thursday afternoon, the tension was palpable. The Philadelphia rapper, known for his activism on criminal justice reform, appeared visibly distressed as he approached the witness stand. Wearing a simple black suit with no jewelry, unusual for the typically flashy artist, Meek looked like a man about to confront demons he had long tried to suppress. His hands shook noticeably as he was sworn in, and when asked to state his name, his voice was barely audible. Robert Rymeek Williams, professionally known as Meek Mill, he said, then added quietly, "Though I don't know if I deserve that name after what I've stayed silent about." Prosecutor Angela Martinez approached with visible concern for the witness's emotional state. "Mr. Williams, thank you for your courage in appearing here today. Could you please tell the court how you first encountered Sean Combs?" Meek took several deep breaths before responding, his voice heavy with emotion. "I first met Sean in 2012, right after I signed with Rick Ross and Maybach Music Group. At that time, Sean was like a god in hip-hop. When he took interest in me, told me he wanted to guide my career to the next level, I thought I had made it." "What was the nature of this guidance Mr. Combs offered?" "At first it seemed legitimate. Sean would invite me to industry events, introduce me to important people, give me advice about branding and business. He said I had raw talent, but needed to understand how the real game is played if I wanted to reach Diddy or Jay-Z levels of success." "When did this mentorship begin to feel different?" Meek's composure started to crack. "Maybe 6 months into our relationship, Sean started inviting me to what he called brotherhood meetings. He said these were gatherings of successful black men in the industry who looked out for each other. He made it sound like an honor to be included." "Can you describe these brotherhood meetings?" "They started at Sean's house, or sometimes at private clubs. The meetings would begin with normal conversation about business, about supporting each other's projects. But as the night went on and people started drinking, the conversation would shift to more personal topics." "What kind of personal topics?" Meek wiped his eyes, which had begun to tear up. "Sean would start talking about loyalty tests and proving your commitment to the brotherhood. He said that in order to truly trust each other in business, we needed to be vulnerable with each other in ways that most people wouldn't understand." "Did Mr. Combs explain what he meant by being vulnerable?" "He said that powerful men throughout history had always had special bonds that went beyond normal friendships. He showed us historical examples, talked about ancient civilizations, made it seem like what he was suggesting was normal and even necessary for success." The prosecutor moved closer to the witness stand. "Mr. Williams, did these meetings ever move beyond conversation?" Meek broke down, completely sobbing uncontrollably. The judge called for a brief recess to allow him to compose himself. When proceedings resumed, he appeared more determined despite his emotional state. Sean made it clear that participation in certain activities was the price of admission to the highest levels of the industry. He said that everyone who was truly successful had gone through these initiations. "Did you participate in these activities?" "To my eternal shame, yes. I was young, hungry for success, and Sean convinced me that this was just how business was done at the highest levels. He made it seem like refusing would mark me as someone who couldn't be trusted with real power and opportunity." "How did these experiences affect you personally?" "They destroyed me psychologically. I started having panic attacks, couldn't sleep, turned to drugs and alcohol to numb the shame and confusion. I knew what was happening wasn't right, but Sean had convinced me that speaking out would end my career and make me a target." "Did Mr. Combs use your participation to control you?" "Absolutely. He made it clear that he had recordings and photos from these meetings. He never threatened me directly, but he would make comments like, 'It's good that we trust each other completely, Meek. That kind of mutual understanding is valuable in this business.'" "Can you give an example of how this control manifested?" Meek nodded, his voice becoming stronger. "In 2015, I wanted to speak out about some injustices I was seeing in the industry: artists being exploited, young women being manipulated. Sean called me and reminded me that I had obligations to the Brotherhood and that going against the family would have consequences I couldn't imagine. What happened when you tried to distance yourself from Mr. Combs? It was like being in a maze with no exit. Every time I tried to pull away, Sean would either offer me an opportunity too good to refuse or remind me of what he had on me. He made it clear that my success depended on maintaining our relationship. Mr. Williams, was there a turning point that made you realize you needed to break free? When I became a father. Looking at my son, I realized I couldn't live with myself if he ever found out about the choices I had made. I started going to therapy, trying to understand how I had let myself get into that situation. How did you finally break away from Mr. Combs' influence? It took years of therapy and building a support system of people who cared about me as a person, not just as an asset. When I started my criminal justice reform work, I found purpose beyond just music success. That gave me the strength to finally say no to Sean's demands. How did Mr. Combs react when you established these boundaries? He was furious. He told me I was forgetting where I came from and that I would regret burning bridges with people who made me. Within months, I started having problems that seemed to come from nowhere. Collaborations falling through radio play, decreasing business deals becoming complicated. Did you connect these setbacks to your decision to distance yourself from Mr. Combs? I couldn't prove it, but the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Sean had always made it clear that loyalty was rewarded and disloyalty was punished. Mr. Williams, why are you sharing this story now? Meek looked directly at the jury, tears streaming down his face. Because I've spent years in therapy dealing with the trauma of what Sean put me through, and I realized that my silence was enabling him to continue hurting other young artists. When I heard the testimonies from the other victims, especially the younger ones, I knew I had to speak up. What do you want people to understand about your experience? I want young artists to understand that success is never worth sacrificing your dignity and self-respect. I want the industry to understand that what happened to me wasn't mentorship or brotherhood, it was manipulation and abuse. And I want other survivors to know that healing is possible, but it starts with telling the truth. During cross-examination, defense attorney Marcus Thompson attempted to discredit Meek's testimony. Mr. Williams, you've had well-documented issues with substance abuse and legal troubles. How can the court be certain your recollection of these events is accurate? Meek's response was firm despite his emotional state. My substance abuse was a direct result of trying to cope with the trauma of what Sean did to me. The legal troubles came from self-destructive behavior that stem from unprocessed shame. These problems don't invalidate my testimony, they support it. Isn't it possible that you're motivated by revenge against someone you blame for your personal struggles? Sir, I'm motivated by the hope that my testimony might prevent other young artists from going through what I experienced. I don't want revenge, I want accountability and healing. As Meek prepared to step down from the witness stand, he asked if he could make a statement to other potential victims. To any young artist who has been in a situation like mine, what happened to you wasn't your fault. The adults who should have protected you failed. Don't let shame and fear keep you silent like I did for so many years. And to the industry, we have to do better. Success built on exploitation isn't success. It's a crime against humanity. He looked directly at Diddy for the first time during his testimony. Sean, you stole my innocence and my peace of mind. You made me believe that abuse was mentorship and that exploitation was opportunity. But I survived, I'm healing, and now everyone knows what you really are. Disclaimer. The content above is entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes only. No verified court evidence or official statements confirm these claims.